I'm back filling in for Greg. He's going through some testing, and he will give you guys an update when he is finished with that. But right now, I am joined by David Austin. So, David, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and have a conversation with me today.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about you. I understand that you are a painter and you do some live streams with your paintings. So tell me a little bit about what all you do.
Sure. So I'm a professional painter. I've been doing this for many years. I actually started in art professionally, I think when I was 15 or something, the first.
Oh, wow.
Thing. So graphic design is where I started. And then I went to Northern Michigan University in ceramics of all things. And then my senior, not ceramics. Well, I graduated, I should say, with a BFA in ceramics, but I started in graphic design. And my senior year, I flunked my final review. So I took a bunch of other ones, added 2 more years on to my degree process, which my parents were absolutely thrilled about.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. So I ended up in ceramics because of the professor. His name was Marvin Zender. He's a great guy. He was the kind of professor I needed at that moment in time. And that's why I ended up in ceramics. And then I was doing large scale work, public art types of work. And I got stuck in the RV on a particularly terrible installation. And it was raining every day. It was just windy. It was cold. It was snowing. It was awful. And I was bored out of my mind. So I went and grabbed a bunch of painting supplies again and started painting again. I hadn't painted in years. This was probably early 2000s. So I've been focusing primarily on the painting since then again. Yeah.
Wow. So where does your love for art and especially for painting kind of come from? Has it just always been a part of you? I know you said that you started when you were 15. Was that influenced, from like a teacher? Like I have a teacher that made me love history. So I'm like a huge history person now. How did that love for art and specifically painting kind of come about for you?
Well, so I was doomed to be an artist from the beginning. It was inevitable, unfortunately. And my mom was an art educator and my dad was a professional photographer. So early on, I got to be in every art class and every kind of art center situation and was taken to all of the receptions and the openings and things along that line. And so it's unfortunate in some respects because it's a hard life. It's a hard life being an artist. But I can't imagine really doing anything else.
Yeah. So I know from, having those conversations, like I love what I do, right? Which is I'm more marketing, but my degree's in psychology. So it's, one of those things, I guess one kind of feeds the other. But when you do what you love doing, you're not really working and stuff. So how did you kind of turn your love for painting into what it's evolved at today? How did that kind of happen for you?
Well, it's such a huge pattern. It's a huge process. How I ended up here at this point in time, and it's always a struggle. You're trying to make money doing what you love to do, and it's not always that easy, particularly in the arts. Just getting people to notice you, to buy the work, or to fund new work, anything like that. Getting grants is terrible. For example, one of the things that I'm not an administrator. I need an administrator, and we've had ones occasionally that have helped us, but you're doing a lot of grant writing. You're doing a lot of writing of statements and asking for money. And, there's just all of this stuff that you have to write. And that to me has been one of the biggest struggles to do. I forgot the question. What was the question?
No, that's a good one. The struggles of being an artist, because you always hear about, oh, I'm a struggling artist, and in any aspect, musician, any kind of form of art. So it's nice to know, like, writing those things and applying for grants and finding funding to maintain your art really is a big struggle. And so, kind of, how has it evolved for you into what it is now? Because we had kind of mentioned a little bit, you do, live streaming and things like that. So
Oh,
tell us
yeah.
how all that's evolved.
Yeah. So about just about the time the pandemic started, the very beginning, before it actually started to be a problem. In that fall, my wife came to me very sheepishly and said, I'd really like to join you in this journey with the art. I'd like to help you do the things. And I answered, yes. Why did you even have to ask? Let's go.
I love it.
So she's an absolutely brilliant person. I was hoping she would be here today, but she's off doing her marketing gig. Speaking of marketing, so she does social media, designs websites. She does most of the video work. She does the live streaming shows for us. So that all the things that I really can't do and don't want to do. I'm a little bit older, so for me, learning a lot of this stuff I just want to paint. I just want to sculpt.
Yeah.
Go in the studio and work. So she has been incredible, and so our social media platforms have just rocketed up from what it was. It's not as big as it could be. It could always be bigger, but being recognized, we picked up a new gallery out in the Southamptons because of the work that she did with the video work. We picked up, I'm an ambassador for Royal Talons, which is a major distributor of like Rembrandt, Van Gogh, Amsterdam acrylics, Sakura pens and pencils. It's all around me here. And so that was really big. And we wouldn't have gotten that if it hadn't been for what she was doing by putting us out there more. So then anyway, so what happened is she said, well, we need to do live shows to help promote your work. And I'm like, oh, great. I don't want to be on. No. But I went into it fighting and kicking and screaming. And I knew from one of our other businesses that it was important to do video now. I mean, you have to do video as a sales tool. And so I gradually got a little better, a little more comfortable being on the camera, at least on my own show. It's always different when you're being interviewed by somebody else. And so we started doing this show, this live streaming show. And sometimes we do it with Saturday morning at 10 a.m., like Saturday morning cartoons. And then we did it during the week many times. And a lot of times my son would come on and he'd paint with me. And it was fun. It was laid back. It was encouraging. We used the hashtag Create Without Fear. We were really,
I love that.
Yeah. So that's when we encourage everybody else to use it. We like to go in there and kind of troll and see what everybody's doing under that hashtag. We were encouraging people to create, not to be artists, but to be creative.
Yeah.
And we had no idea the impact that we were having during that pandemic period. And this last year, we had to do a survey for some grant or some funder that we were trying to get. And the surveys that came back were just, I walked into Kristen's office and I was like, why are you crying? And she's like, the things these people are saying, that you saved my life during the pandemic. You made every difference in the world. You helped me through these. I mean, the responses were incredible. We had no idea what the impact we were having internationally. And you think about it, everybody was stuck in little apartments, right?
Yeah.
We were fortunate. We had an acre of land in a beautiful location. We had our own private, pond that I had built. And so, I mean, we had no idea, but the more we got to know our followers, the more we realized that it was important for them because they were stuck inside all the time in these lockdowns. And anyway, so that's why the show kind of got more and more popular. Now we're trying to expand on it, create more of an elevated experience with the show. And we still are making an impact, but the viewership is down a little bit because not everybody's stuck inside anymore.
Well, I think, having people to express their creative side, even if it's not perfect, like people like me, for instance, right? I make stick figures look terrible. Like it's just like make them look bad. I don't know how you can do it, but you can. And there's this, thing about being perfect, but I think what
No.
I find so appealing for art is it doesn't have to be perfect because it's art and it's being creative and expressive. And I think at a time during the pandemic, it really helped people mentally,
Yeah,
when you're cooped up and stuff.
true.
Like my life didn't change. My husband was one of the essential workers, so he still had to go into the office. My life was still the same with my 3 and 2-year-old, at home. They were much younger at the time. So my life wasn't impacted by it, but being able to express in a creative form, I think is refreshing and kind of taking perfectionism away. I think because that is a very difficult thing that's going on, like being perfect. Everything needs to look photo-esque, right? And so I can only imagine that that's such a beautiful thing to kind of express. And so now with people not being cooped up, it is a struggle, but I think it's still something that's really needed, to kind of just express yourself in a creative sense and not have to worry about outside opinions and stuff, because that is kind of prevalent. And I think that's what art really does, is it takes you out of all of those things. So I think that's a beautiful thing that you're doing, and that your wife has pushed you outside your comfort zone to do, which I love. I've done video for much longer than 8 years, so I'm more comfortable here than meeting people in person. So I can relate to you now being, more comfortable doing it. But I love the concept of it and just doing it. And I love your story of how you kind of fell into painting. You were doomed, you said, to be a painter and an artist and ceramics and stuff. So tell us, do you still do things with ceramics? Is it mostly just painting? Kind of what are you working on at the moment?
Well, there's a lot of different projects happening. For example, we've been involved with several films lately too, which has been an experience. But I still do some potting. Mostly with the pottery, I'm looking at deconstructing the form of the pot. And you mentioned perfection, and what is perfection? And of course, there's this thing called menge, which is the craftsman kind of thing from Japan, and where it's deliberately made a little off, or it's not, so it's not a machine made object, it's made by a human hand. And that sort of thing has really crept in more and more to some of my work, and I'm not really making functional ware anymore. I don't do a lot. I'm doing a lot of sculptures, found objects, sculptures as well, but the painting is still primary. And I paint large, so it could be a 8x8 painting, or a 10 by 10 or 20, just one that goes the full length of the studio. I have 1,000 square foot studio, which is not enough, as it turns out. You give me 2,000, I'll probably fill it in a month. So very prolific. But along this back wall, it was 38 feet long paper piece by 5.5 feet, I think. Huge pieces. And I love that kind of that ability to create a narrative within that, almost a storyline with it. And they're very abstract, but there's representational elements within it, and dealing with man, myth, legend, history, societal issues. For example, economic disparity has been one I'm very conscious of, because money is hard no matter who you are. I think so. That's kind of been happening. And then the film industry that's been coming to Duluth right now for actually about 2 years. We moved here a little more than a year and a half ago, and I was putting a show up, and one of the people were scouting this building and hollered down from the balcony, "Hey, you want to have your work in the movie?" I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Yeah.
So it was, and so far one of them is out. It's Mary Kiss Cam, and it's on Hulu. It's streaming on Hulu. It came out during was it Thanksgiving or Christmas? I can't remember which, this last year. And there's some major scenes in there where my bigger pieces are shown, and that was really fun. And then there's 2 more since then. One we just wrapped recently that I have smaller works in. It's not as big as Mary Kiss Cam. So that's been an experience working with art deck people.
I love that. It's opened so many kind of avenues for you doing what you love doing. So how do you find the inspiration to paint, your bigger pieces of art? Do they just come with like everyday life, or, like with authors and stuff, which is primarily who I work with, and they have an idea that comes to them in the middle of the night, and they're like, I got to get up and I got to write about it. So what sparks your creativity and inspiration for your big pieces?
Yeah, so that we get that question a lot on the show too, because a lot of people get a writer's block. That everybody talks about writer's block, and to be honest, when I was younger, I had similar problems. I remember at university, at the time when I was taking all the different ones, trying to figure out which avenue I wanted. I had a painting studio there too, and I had a couple of truly terrible paintings in there, and I was stuck. And in fact, one particularly I remember was the ubiquitous required chess painting, painting of a chess set. It was horrible, terrible, and I just didn't know what to do. But through years of practice and learning tricks, I'm to the point where there's no shortage of ideas. What there is a shortage of is time and materials.
Yeah.
That's my biggest problem. And people say, how can you be so prolific? I was like, well, for one thing, it's consistency. And a lot of writers you'll talk to will say the same thing. I go into the studio to write every day at the same time, no matter if I'm making crap,
Yeah.
Going in, I'm working. And so I subscribe to that. And when I hit late 40s, I suddenly couldn't sleep past like 3:30 anymore. And it was making me crazy. So finally, my head was on fire with ideas. And I finally just started working in the studio. And that also was good because my kid, there wasn't the distraction of having to take care of my kiddo. The phone calls hadn't started. And so it has become now habit. By about 4 a.m., I'm in the studio and I work there, 3-4 hours consistently. And that is a set time. That's when I go in every single day is the goal. It doesn't always work that way, but life happens.
Yeah.
But through that consistency, and then the other little tricks that I've come up with, there's no problem anymore with ideas. You just got to do it, and that's the biggest key I can offer anyone.
Yeah, you just got to get in there and start. Something will happen. Being consistent,
even if it's terrible.
Yeah, at least you got in there and you did it, right?
You're working.
It's one of those things for sure. So you kind of mentioned, your wife had gotten you up on all the social media sites and things like that. I believe that you said that you have a website. So do you have art that people can purchase or they can see, or what is that like for you?
Sure. So we did online. We have an online shop, although it's not really heavily populated right now. But there's also right now we also have our fashion line, and I think there's still some products up there too. This is the kind of thing that my genius of a wife also does. So she designs the fashion and the product design based on the paintings that I have. Oh, nice. So she'll take the imagery and then she'll cut them up and repaste them on, like yoga tights, for example, are fairly popular, and then sport jackets. So a lot of athletic wear, and then some furniture too. So that's available. And if you want I'll give you the link.
Yeah.
It's davidaustingallery.com. So
awesome. That's easy enough to remember. It's your name and then gallery. So that's easy enough for sure. Well, David, I want to thank you for taking time away from your painting to come and talk with us. I know I'm not Greg, but I always have this running joke with Greg whenever he can't make a show. It's always with what I find to be the best and most interesting people. So I'm grateful that Greg's not here, that I got to talk to you and just learn more about it. I don't get to talk with artists very often. So it's been such a pleasure to have you on and to get to know you better.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
No, absolutely. It's been so much fun. But you guys, Greg will be back. He'll give you an update. But until I see you next time, bye for now, everybody.